Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my preview for this weekend's 2025 Canadian Grand Prix. So first, taking a look at your track, your Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. This is a track with a lot of long straights and a lot of really slow, heavy braking zones. Probably one of my favorite tracks on the calendar. It's a track that, provides pretty good racing, although there have been, some misses in the recent past, like the 2018 race where, almost nothing happened. But that being said, let's take a look at the circuit layout. So Sector 1, you obviously have your first two corners that complex together, and then short straight turns 3 and 4, and that basically is the end of Sector 1. Sector 2 is you basically have two chicanes, the turns 6, 7, and then 8, 9, and then following up Sector 3 is the hairpin at the end towards the end of the lap, and then you have the chicane approaching the wall of champions. 3 DRS zones, one between the turn 14, turn 1, one between turn 7, turn 8, and then another going down kind of that back straight into turn 13. Taking a look at some stats about this track, it's 4.361 kilometers. We're expected to have 70 laps of racing on Sunday, and the race lap record is a 1:13.078 set by Valtteri Bottas in 2019. It'll be interesting to see, assuming this weekend is dry, it'll be interesting to see how close we get to that lap record. The average speed of that lap record is 215 kilometers an hour, which ranks 16th out of the 24 tracks on this year's calendar. So even though this is a track with really, really long straights, just because the corners are so slow, it does rank in the bottom half of the 2024 calendar. In terms of downforce rating, pretty low downforce. It's a 0.05. The cars will be going at full throttle for 76% of the lap. And like I said before, the corner tendency is towards slow speed corner. So very similar to Monza in that regard. Now, in terms of the pole win percentage, it's about 62%. So again, that's about average, I would say, and that's from 2010 onwards. So that's after the refueling era has ended. In terms of rookie out-qualifying percentage, it is one of the lower ones on the calendar, 29%. Makes sense given that Formula 2, Formula 3 don't race here. So the, 6 rookies on the grid this year will be their first time ever at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. So there will definitely be a bit of a learning curve for those drivers. Safety car percentage, pretty high. It's a street circuit. The walls are very close. And so 69% is, about, I would say a little bit on the higher end of the spectrum. And of course, in recent years, safety cars come out a lot more frequently than in the past, like the 70s, 80s. So honestly, if you only looked at the data from the past 15, 20 years, that percentage would probably be even higher. This is one of the most historic tracks on the F1 calendar, with its first race coming in 1978, and racing almost every year since then. Tires for this weekend, 3 softest in the Pirelli range, C6, soft C6, medium C5, and the hard C4. The races that we had at Imola and Monaco with this range of tires were pretty interesting from a strategy perspective. And I know, for example, at Imola, the C5 tire, the medium, was actually the better qualifying tire at times. So it'll be interesting to see if those characteristics continue over to this weekend. Now, schedule for this weekend, pretty straightforward. For Friday, free practice 1:30 in the afternoon, free practice 2, 5 p.m. The expected weather for FP2 is 18 degrees and partially cloudy. For Saturday, FP3, 12:30 p.m. local time, with qualifying coming at 4 p.m. And the expected temperature for qualifying is 20 degrees and again, partially cloudy. For Sunday, Grand Prix, 2 p.m. sharp local time. Expected weather, 23 degrees and partially cloudy. So again, it seems like the weather is probably going to increase as the weekend goes along. So that could definitely influence things, influence tire projections, for example, because for FP2, if the track temperature, air temperature, is roughly 5 degrees colder than during the race, then it means that there might be a lot more thermal degradation than they were actually expecting, and that could also affect, their numbers for how much cooling the car needs in order to not cause reliability concerns. So those are things where it could have an impact on the race. Now, for last year's race, it was one of the better races of the 2024 season, won by Max Verstappen, and he was joined by Lando Norris and George Russell on the podium. So Russell led the race from pole, of course, in qualifying. Russell and Verstappen set identical lap times in qualifying, one of the something that happens very, very rarely, of course. But again, Russell led in a very, very wet start. Some drivers, I think the Haas drivers in particular, started on the wet tires, and they basically moved up to like P4, P6, I believe, on those wet tires. Unfortunately, track dried out, and that gamble didn't quite work out for them. But it was pretty interesting in the moment. There were quite a few incidents in this race. You had Logan Sargent spinning out between turns 3 and 4. You had Sainz having a bit of a mishap and taking out Alex Albon, and that was towards the middle of the race, turn 6, 7. And of course, you had the near miss between Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hülkenberg later on, with Tsunoda spinning out of a points paying position. So that last year's race was very, very good. Don't expect us to quite reach that same level, especially if it's dry. And again, with how difficult it's been to overtake this year, it might be a race where qualifying really sets the order for the end result in the Grand Prix. Now, for best qualifiers, worst qualifiers for this track historically, this is going from 2010 compared to each driver's basically career average. So best is Fernando Alonso plus 22% with a median qualifying delta of 0.4 of a second in his favor. He's never been out-qualified at this track in the basically post-refueling era, so from 2010 onwards. Number 2, Lewis Hamilton, not a surprise. He's known as one of his best tracks, plus 14% for him, meaning qualifying delta of just over 0.3 of a second. And number 3, Alex Albon, plus 8%. No, that's not a typo. His median qualifying gap is just over 0.8 of a second. He had 2 qualifying sessions of the 4 he's done here where he's out-qualified his teammate by over a second. So that's basically really skews the data there. So in a bit of a small sample size, but yeah, Albon generally really good record at this track. Now, in terms of worst qualifiers, worst one is Charles Leclerc, minus 25%. And again, even when you just take the raw number, it's less than 50%. And given how good of a qualifier Leclerc is, it's a big surprise. Median qualifying gap, 2.27 tenths against him. Number 2, George Russell, also minus 25%, but for him, it's 50%. So he still, on average, has his median qualifying gap is 7 thousandths of a second. And number 3, Yuki Tsunoda, minus 17%, median qualifying gap, 2.36 tenths of a second against him. Now, the 10 drivers who are predicted to out-qualify their teammates this weekend are Piastri, Hamilton, Verstappen, Russell, Alonso, Gasly, Ocon, Hadjar, Albon, and Hülkenberg. Don't think there's any real big surprises there, although I do think looking at the data, the Alonso-Stroll predicted gap's very, very big. Stroll actually has a terrible record in qualifying at his home track. Other surprises, I think the Albon-Sainz ones may be a little bit big. I would expect it to be a little bit less than that, but all the other ones I think could definitely be in that ballpark. Now, for predictions for this weekend, I think for me, pretty easy to predict a McLaren 1-2. They've been de facto best car every track this year. I know it's a bit of a boring one. Now, this track does have some similarities to Australia in terms of, the straights, the braking, the cornering tendencies. So I'm actually going to predict Lando Norris ahead of Piastri this weekend. I do think he's been better marginally at these kinds of tracks with slow rear limited corners. So I am going to pick Norris ahead of Piastri. But that being said, it could definitely go the other way. For rounding out the podium, I'm not sure how strong Red Bull is going to be at this track. There are quite a few long straights, and they generally seem to be okay there. But the high-speed corners where Red Bull is very close to being on par with the McLarens overall, not a whole lot of those kinds of corners here. Temperatures are low as well, so it might favor Mercedes. And again, Ferrari did very well in Monaco, where there's lots of slow-speed corners. But Monaco is such a unique track where you can basically just load up on high downforce. You don't have to worry about any of the aerodynamic compromises that you need to at most tracks. So I do think that they're going to struggle here quite a bit. So I'm going to predict George Russell to round out the podium in third. He did very well to get a podium here last year, so I think reasonable chance he could get one this weekend. But that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Verstappen instead. When he has these bad weekends like he did last time in Spain, he does generally have a tendency to bounce back pretty strongly. Like if you look back to Mexico last year, where he finished sixth, he followed that up by having one of his best wins ever at the Brazilian Grand Prix. So I do expect Verstappen to bounce back in a positive way this weekend. So there you go. There's my preview for the 2025 Canadian Grand Prix. Should be a good one. Looking forward to the action. I'll be back with my review of the Grand Prix on Monday. Yeah, Monday morning, my time. So thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.